I'm sure lots of these listeners have like gone to foreign countries or, like spent even like summer camp. I feel like, when you spend multiple weeks or multiple months in a completely different culture, a completely different environment, and then you come back to your life as it was prior with your family doing the same stuff as they were, whatever, it can be hard to come back and be like, wait, but I just felt so like connected to myself and connected to nature, or, I just like saw the world in a totally new way. And then coming back, yeah, it's really hard.
Hello and welcome back to the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. My name is Matthew Darlitz. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Science of Psychotherapy. Unfortunately, today when Richard Hill, he's not with us. He's out cruising around Australia. He's on a well-deserved break. So hi, Richard. Hope you're having a wonderful time out there. But I'm here holding the fort, and I'm here with return guest Sophie Sharman. Now, we talked about the sensitive child last time. Sophie, welcome back. You've brought a guest with you. Would you like to introduce us to Rachel?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back, Matthew. I'm sorry to miss Richard on the call, but yeah. I had so much fun chatting about my work with the sensitive child last time, and it was a really expansive and connecting conversation. And when I think of the words expansive and connecting, it makes sense that one of my closest friends, Rachel, came to mind at the end of our call offline. I said, I feel like I need to tell you about my friend Rachel. Rachel Lyons is here with us now, and she is the executive director for Space for Humanity, which is a nonprofit organization which aims to use the space flight experience as a way to expand our perspective on Earth. Rachel is an incredible advocate for this organization, and in the time of our friendship, I have seen her lead with, really, I'm in awe of the ways she has led in some of the ways that we'll be sharing today, but I got to sit by her side when she launched the first, I'll say, normal person up into space, and the way that she guided this person and the community around this person into understanding what it means to see Earth from space. And so, yeah, expansion, connectivity, and I can't wait for Rachel to share more.
That's awesome. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored and like almost pinching myself that I'm on a psychotherapy podcast, because usually I'm talking to, STEM people or science, more like, hard science sorts of people. And I think I find psychotherapy fascinating. So I feel really excited to be here. And thank you, Sophie.
Well, hey, look, we are always talking about perspectives and perspective taking, how we frame things. And so what you are doing is very much, front and center in our field. And we're going to talk about having a different perspective. So look, what I thought would be really fun to start with, and Rachel, you showed me this video that you did a little while ago. And I won't preempt too much of it, but I'd just like to play this clip first and have a bit of a chat.
Ready to watch somebody being told they're going to space? Hey everybody, I'm Richard Branson, and a little while back we offered one lucky winner the chance to win 2 seats aboard one of Virgin Galactic's first space flights. And today, we're about to surprise that winner, Keisha, right here at our home in Antigua. Keisha thinks she's a finalist and that she's hopping on a virtual chat with my partners, Matt, co-founder of Amaze, and Rachel, executive director of Space for Humanity. But what Keisha doesn't know is that we're actually parked right around the corner from her home, ready to surprise her with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So let's do this.
Here we are in the back of a moving van in Antigua in our fake office. Richard, you've done a lot of adventurous things in your life. How does this compare?
I love pulling people's legs and making you see them smile, so you better smile.
Let's do it. Hi, Keisha. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
We know that one of your goals has always been to go to space.
It's very crazy, but I always dreamt of life beyond Earth. I think dreams always can come true. Maybe not in this lifetime, but it will come true eventually.
Keisha, I just want to thank you for entering and being a finalist. Before we ever launched Omaze, we did a whiteboarding session and wrote down this would be a success if, and one of the first things we wrote is that we'd make it so that any person in the world would have a chance to go to space. So the fact that you are a finalist, it's also a dream come true for us. And have you thought about it at all who you would take with you if you won?
Actually, my daughter wants to come with me. She says, don't you dare take anybody else.
So envision this, you're standing there with your daughter and you're about to go, and Richard is standing there. What would you say to Richard?
I would tell him I love him. Thank you.
Hey, Keisha, I think we're having challenges here on the internet side. Let us log off and call you back.
Sure, no problem.
We're off to the races now. Let's go. Come here. You're going to space.
So I get to say, I love you and thank you. My heart is like...
You're gonna be an astronaut.
Anna.
Hi, Anna. You and your mother are going to space.
Anna, we won! Wow!
So you would be the first astronaut from Antigua, of course. You're making history. So are you ready to see the anticipated race? So we project $1.7 million is going to be able to empower people to go to space. You want to talk about what that'll mean for you guys?
Yeah, I'm so moved right now. This is transformational for our organization. The perspective that astronauts gain from going to space and looking and seeing this interconnected, fragile, beautiful planet, we believe that this is the most important perspective that we can take on right now. And so this gift will help us to make the world a better place.
Well, I need tissues. I couldn't be more excited for Keisha and our friends at Space for Humanity. It's truly a win-win. And from all of us here, thank you so much for donating and for being a part of the Omaze community. Cheers.
So, wow, Rachel, that just looked like so much fun.
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks just
Yeah.
watching it again.
You couldn't have got a better person than Keisha for her response. She was just so elated.
Yeah, she's amazing. She was really the perfect person. And part of our mission is it's about selecting leaders to go and have this experience, which I think I'll probably talk about at some point soon. But, you know, she would be someone who made it to the top of the list for us. So I was thrilled to meet Keisha and thrilled that she was selected.
Fantastic. So what's happening now with Keisha and this adventure?
Virgin Galactic has not started flying yet. I honestly don't know what the latest is with what they're publicly saying about when they'll be flying. So just for anyone listening, if they're curious, you can just Google Virgin Galactic next flight and see what comes up. But
yeah.
she'll be flying, you know, early on in those flights, and she'll be bringing her daughter with her. And yeah, they'll be the first mother-daughter duo to ever go to space. And they'll both be the first people from the Caribbean. And I believe the first of its kind, like the first of a true lottery to go to space as well.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about Space for Humanity, what you're doing. Can you just give us a bit of a background as to where you came to be in the position that you are now?
Yeah, totally. So my personal story is that I discovered my love for space when I was 19. So yeah, Sophie started talking about expansiveness and connection. That, like, for me, I had my first really deep, profound experience of that when I was 19, watching a documentary, Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos, that showed the scale of the universe. And so just for me, learning that we lived on this little tiny planet in this big, massive universe, like, shifted everything for me. And I became absolutely obsessed with space. And also, like, obsessed with learning about what had happened to me. And I think this also, like, relates to my friendship with Sophie as well, because I think that it's all about the expansiveness, whether it's like inner world, like psychotherapy, or outer world, like space, like it is about transcending paradigms. So I went into aerospace engineering, and then soon after graduating, I met the founder of Space for Humanity, Dylan Taylor, and heard about what he was doing, which is what this mission is, to sponsor people from all over the world to go to space so that they can have this like paradigm shifting experience that happens to astronauts, and then have them come back down and be like seeds planted all around the world to share this perspective far and wide. And I was so inspired by the mission, and I just knew that I had to get involved. And then I was lucky enough to actually start as a volunteer and then come on as the first full-time employee in 2019 and executive director. And we've been doing it ever since. Yeah. And there are connections between all of this work.
Yeah. Wow. Sophie, so tell me about the connection between the two of you.
I have like the cheesiest smile. It's not coming off my face. I can't like get my smile off my face. Rachel and I have a really, really close friendship. We actually met dancing. We would both, like, little did we know we were both out in the world, like really, really visioning and working hard for our greater purposes, which in my case is supporting sensitive children and their parents, and in Rachel's case is also expanding people's consciousness in a really different way. And we would dance, like we would go to different dances where we could just, move our bodies, release, like connect with ourselves, like more of a conscious movement space. And we would always be next to each other. And about a year after dancing next to each other and communicating in so many ways, because we're just there, like, in presence with music, we finally talked to each other. And I think within 2 weeks, we were best friends. Like, we were like, oh my gosh, like you get it, you get how I'm seeing it. And since then, we've been able to form just such a supportive bond. And we've talked a lot about how our friendship is supported by purpose. Like, it's like we have, it's not so much about the drama. Of course, there's relational moments. And because we're both aware and conscious people, we've navigated moments together, but we've talked about how we're here to support each other in purpose beyond this relationship. And so we in times of meditating together, hiking together, like we pretty much call each other to check in on how connected are you to what matters, and if not, how can we get there? Want to do it together? Want to do it on your own? Like, but we know we need to stay in connection. And I love this idea that my work has been about helping people root down further. My business is called Rooted Rhythm, and it helps parents become more rooted in their own rhythm. Like I'm very connected to earth, and Rachel's, she's actually one of the people, like more than anyone I know, I feel, Rachel, that you're connected to earth and space. Like in your universal view of the world, and the way I've seen you grieve for natural disasters that are happening. Like I see your connection to the earth, and then I also see your expansive view of the cosmos. And I think it takes a very unique, one of a kind person that has that perspective to run a mission for like Space for Humanity.
Wow. Yeah. Some great themes there, being rooted, being grounded, and having this this integrative perspective on the earth and all of us. And so I really want to sort of dig deeper into this whole thing of perspective and changing perspective. I know, and I said before we started recording, I love watching the International Space Station, footage as they go around the planet. And the thing that really strikes me is that you can't see the artificial boundaries and borders and things that, political borders and all of the different boundaries, which we probably have, a fairly strong sense of, but from space, it's all, we're all together, right? So Rachel, tell me a little bit more about this this perspective that we can have and what it does to people.
Yeah, so I can actually bring in a little bit of psychology into this as well. And basically there's this concept, I think it's more than a concept. I would say, I think it's actually known as a theory, but doesn't actually matter, called the overview effect. And basically it is that when astronauts go to space and they take on that view that you that you just talked about, Matthew, and they look back down at this interconnected, fragile, floating, beautiful gem, like with the brightest colors that they've ever seen,
Right.
planet, and then looking out in every other direction into infinity while weightless. And when they have that perspective is such a paradigm shift that it changes people forever. And very often astronauts come back down with a completely new perspective about everything that is happening on our planet, from the environment to politics to humanitarian issues to even just like their place in their local communities. And yeah, I mean, I will say, like, for me, it started with space. And this is again where like me and Sophie's friendship comes in. It's like it started with space for me, and my life was fundamentally changed. Like everything, my purpose showed up. Like suddenly I had like awe every day. Like I just was like, I can't believe that I'm here. I saw my problems from a much greater lens. And for me, what I realized is that it is really just about transformation. And there are so many ways to bring these sorts of transformations. And space is one of those tools. Psychotherapy, working with children is another one of those tools. Like we have all these tools to help us look bigger. And the last thing that I'll say about it is that, like, I've read different systems change theory. Specifically this one woman, Danella Meadows. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she wrote pieces saying that the most powerful way to shift like systems, like the most powerful way to shift culture is by transcending paradigms. And so it's by, like, on a collective level, helping people see bigger and think bigger. And I think that that's the basis of both me and Sophie's work. And I also think it's the most important cause. For me, it's the most important cause that there is, because all the issues that exist inside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sophie, you're not taking kids and their parents to space, but you're doing a similar, shift in perspective. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was relating to what Rachel was saying in this moment about supporting people in the therapy setting of having their consciousness expand and becoming more aware of, I'll even say, truths that weren't yet in their consciousness before, and how it's massive transformation and it's necessary transformation in systems. In my case, I'm supporting the family system and seeing, oh, wow, we've been making our child wrong or making ourselves wrong. And actually what we need to do is open more and become closer in order for us to find wellness together. But in Rachel's case and the work she does, she's talking about bigger systems change, but both matter, like that micro level family system and the community and the world. But it's also really hard work, and it takes a lot of preparation and integration. And I wanted to kind of pose a question to both you, Matthew, and Rachel. Like, what is necessary for the preparation and integration for this kind of expansiveness and consciousness? And most recently, I was working with a mom using ketamine assisted psychotherapy, which is a tool in my toolbox that I offer clients. And she's ultimately in a space now where she's seeing all the ways she was holding on to anxiety and fear and projecting that onto her child. But the few days after her expansive journey, I'll say, it was really, really difficult, almost as if she wished she hadn't even taken the journey. And I imagine it's even more exponential for people that go to space. So I just love to hear your thoughts and your own perspectives.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is you need a certain amount of bravery to be willing to step outside of the current paradigms that you hold. And when I think about space flight, I think you got to be brave. Rachel, does that come into it? Like this bravery to be willing to step outside your comfort zone, I guess, is a common phrase.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, people aren't applying to our program unless they've got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do have, I don't want to interrupt if you were still talking, Matthew, because I do have a responsibility as well. Okay. So just two things. One is you're talking about how you work in the family system. And then for me, it's like, I'm talking about like the earth system essentially. But all the system, that system exists inside of this system. You know, it's like this system has all these different interconnected systems, and like there's all of the systems are important, just like my body system is another system inside of it, you know, and my own healing impacts the collective, and, you know, my family's healing impacts the collective. So it's all related. So that's my first just like response to that. And then the other thing is you were talking about preparation and integration. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a lot there. So it definitely takes a certain amount of bravery. I mean, I think that, you know, the leading narrative in my field is that the overview effect is something profound that changes someone for the better, and, you know, this and that. And I do know astronauts who have come back and, you know, had depression or alcoholism, or I don't know, I actually don't know who it was, but I do know that there's at least one that has committed suicide. And so I think, just like you're saying, Sophie, when you have a paradigm shifting experience, I mean, you need support for what you discover, you know, and it's really easy to get, I can't even say like what the like adverse effect, like you guys could probably both speak to it much better than I could, but for us, you know, we're thinking about that and we're preparing for it, and, you know, we're helping people open their mind, because one of the most important psychological characteristics that makes someone more susceptible to deep experiences of awe, or the overview effect, awe is the leading emotion, is openness. So we're training people to help them, like we're actually like screening a little bit and then training people to help them with openness, you know, being able to stay present in their body, being able to really take it in. And then they go to space, they have that experience, and then we support them with integration as well, which the people that we've worked with in the past have actually been trained in psychedelic integration, preparation and integration. So there's a lot of commonalities there. We're building something internally right now, but we know that there's a lot of value for us to learn from the psychotherapy field as well.
Yeah, and what strikes me too is, and it's very obvious, you know, being an astronaut is not a solo adventure. You're surrounded by a lot of professionals, and so there's a lot of support before and after going into space. And so the parallels there in psychotherapy, you know, are there as well. You know, we don't just lead people into the unknown without any support, both before and after, you know, exploring different paradigms. Sophie, you know, obviously you're very familiar with this in terms of support. And so as we're leading people into new paradigms, into new ways of thinking, you're right there. And you're leading and guiding, so that you know, we don't, as you were saying, you know, some astronauts might come back and be depressed. Well, I've seen also in psychotherapy leading people into new paradigms, and sometimes the effect can be a little different to what I was expecting, because everyone, you know, responds differently to opening their mind to new paradigms. Do you have anything to add to that perspective, Sophie?
I'm just thinking about the matrix that one comes into this work from, and the matrix that they go back to, and always checking in and assessing for what's there and how we can strengthen that. And so, and this is where family systems comes in, even for people going to space. It's like, who is your support? Who is your family? What relationships do you have, and how do they support you or not? Because any expansive experience will just have you see things and feel things differently. And so I'm even Rachel, you and I have talked a lot about this. I always have questions of like, how are you helping, that kind of thing, and like what's happening psychologically, and it makes me think there probably needs to be at some point a family support group for people going to space. And I always just say, Rachel's my friend that sends normal people to space. Like, to me, it really is that. It's different than someone that decided to be an astronaut, is trained as an astronaut, like has really taken the vocation of that and everything that means just like as a therapist, like I've decided that I'll be carrying other people's pains and releasing them and seeing things and holding that kind of perspective. My experience, Rachel, when you've shared with, I think it's been 3 now, because 2 have actually gone to space, right?
Yeah, so we've sent 2 people to space, and then we have that campaign that we showed at the beginning. That's another person, and that's all.
I think it would be really cool to hear a little bit more about the 2 that have gone. But in my heart, every time it's just like so many mixed emotions. Like, wow, that's so cool. They get to go. That's so, like, it's so cool to witness that. And whoa, like, how's their life going to look the day before and the day after that huge experience?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can we talk about some of the overview effect with those that have been into space? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I am lucky to have interviewed, at this point, I don't even know how many astronauts, like probably more than 20, and including the 2 that we've sent to space. And so I've interviewed people who have gone on like an 11-minute rocket ride, and people who have, spent 6 months in space. And I've heard a range of things. I was just on a panel last week with someone who, his name's Richard Garriott. He was a private astronaut, so he actually bought a ticket to go up to the International Space Station. And he said that it took, I can't remember the exact number, but I think he said it took like 50 orbits for like what he called the overview effect to hit him. Wow. And 50 orbits is like, that's a good amount of time. I believe it takes, I think it's either 45 minutes or 90 minutes to do a full orbit. So, he was there for a solid amount of time before it happened. You can't have that on like a commercial flight that's 11 minutes long. That's what's available right now. But anyways, he has this amazing story of like, basically like all of a sudden sort of like space-time started morphing, and he's like looking out the window, and he's like, it feels like it was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, that's like how like space-time sort of like started morphing. And and yeah, so he has this amazing story about that. And whereas like Kathy Sullivan, who was part of the first female crew, so like the first crew of females that was selected by NASA in the 70s, she was also on the panel, and she said it was the first moment that she saw Earth from space, that everything was different for her. And then our citizen astronauts as well. I mean, one of them, she said she had a single tear going down her face looking back at the Earth, and then she came back and it sort of like hit her on her flight, like her like airplane flight post space flight, and she was just looking out the window and like crying because she was seeing like the mountain range that she had just seen via rocket like going up into space. And then the other woman that we sent, her name's Sarah, and she like I went to crew capsule recovery. So I was like lucky enough to get to like go and watch them get out of the capsule. And we're all standing out there, and it was like, I would say like 10 plus minutes passed with the door open, but no one coming out. And we're all like, what are they doing? Why are they taking so long? And come to find out that she was supposed to be the first one to step out, and she was like crying so much that like they were just like waiting for her to just sort of like, breathe into it and relax before they all walked out. And she came, and the first thing that she did, I don't know if I've told you, I feel like I've told you this, Sophie, but she literally threw her hands up in the air and looked up into the sky and was just crying. And this is from an like 11-minute rocket ride. It's either 8 or 11 minutes. Like, it's short. And she, yeah, I mean, I would say like how everyone describes it is different. When they say that it hits them, it's different. But I will say that like everybody is fundamentally changed. And even the ones who say that they're not changed. I'm actually quoting an astronaut right now who told astronaut Ron Guerin, he was like, even the ones who say they're not changed, they are changed. Yeah. So, and one last thing I'll say about it is I was in a talk with Frank White, who coined the term overview effect. And he says, this amazing talk, he quoted like, 7 different astronauts or 7 different people who had gone to space, all saying very different things of like this, these big feelings of awe. And he's like, well, it's like asking people to describe God, like what comes out of their mouth is going to be very, very different, but they're all fundamentally talking about like the same thing.
So I've got a bit of a technical question about the overview effect. So I'm imagining, obviously, that physically being in weightlessness and physically being above the earth has, a lot to do with the psychological, effect, as opposed to just seeing the pictures. Like, so, I look at the space station pictures and, I think I get a little bit of the overview effect, but I'm sure something is amplified by the physicality of actually being in weightlessness. Is that true?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I would say, like, there's a lot of people who say that you can experience the overview effect on Earth. It's like deep, deep, deep experiences of awe and feeling like you're part of something greater, and like having to transcend paradigms, like what you're experiencing doesn't fit your current knowledge base, and so you need to like expand your mind in order to let it land. So like that can happen on Earth in a lot of ways. Brings me to psychotherapy and Sophie's work as well. And I would say that I'm just going to speak as Rachel here and not as the research. I don't believe that you need to be weightless to have an experience of the overview effect. I think that any sort of like shift in sensory experience, like any sort of like, I'll say like novel sensory experience or stuff that forces you to like think differently, is going to have that sort of impact. And I don't want to say that it's only visual, because it's not only visual, but I do believe that the visual aspect is the most profound.
Maybe it's becoming more philosophical, I don't know. But when you see the Earth below you, even just in a commercial airliner, I've had that experience too.
Yeah, and that's how it happened with Frank White, who coined the term overview effect. Is like he had an overview experience looking out of an airplane window, and then the term came to him and history was made, essentially.
Yeah, and I know in so many ways it's different, but when Rachel and I share our work together, it's so many times it feels like we're sharing about something very similar. Like we talked about the EMDR protocol and the rules, and I know you're not supposed to do this, but there's even been times I'll let Rachel hold the EMDR buzzers just to show her, like if we're having a conversation, I'm like, what if we like expand while we're talking about this? And so you've had that experience, but when I have a client that goes into a calm place with the EMDR buzzers for the first time, maybe ever, maybe in decades, and suddenly they feel expansion and safety at the same time, like everything shifts, like everything does feel differently. And especially because this is a podcast for many psychotherapists, there's this feeling of wanting to say that what many therapists are doing is allowing people to open and shift and then go back into their families and their communities and just shift towards a better world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I'll add to that, Sophie, like I was having challenges with my partner a few months ago, and Sophie was like, you should try my course, like my course, which is made for parents of children.
I was like, maybe you might listen to the boundaries module. You'll learn how to set them with. I love her partner, but I was like, maybe you need to kind of be like his parent and set a boundary. And so she listened to the module.
And it's applicable because we're dealing with like essentially the inner child of the people around us in challenging moments. So it was perfectly applicable and really gave me perspective. And yeah, like it's like then I get that, and then I can show up more and in my relationship as well as in other areas of life, including my work, so like, it's like starting from the inside going outward, like you are also having that effect with psychotherapy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about challenging established neural networks where, the natural flow of our neural networks, our brains love to go to the path of least resistance, which is the paths that are most established. And so when we have different experiences, or when we do a course that Sophie is offering and we're learning some new ways to interact, then we're challenging and we're providing alternative neural pathways. And I would say that even, so certainly going into space, but maybe going hiking a mountain or visiting a different country or doing these things that are outside of the norm, start to, stimulate some new neural pathways. And I think from a neural level, that's what it comes down to. We are opening up more neural pathways that are outside of the paths of least resistance.
Yeah, just to circle back to the preparation and the integration, we have a friend, her name is Kyra, and she was telling me about something to do with psychedelic assisted therapy, and how a teacher had told her that it's like when you take a psychedelic medicine, it's like you're hiking up a mountain and a helicopter picks you up and drops you at the top, and you see the whole view of where you're going, and then it drops you right back off where it picked you up from. And you still have to hike the mountain. You've now seen where you're going, the pathways are open, but you still have to hike up the mountain, and it might be really grueling. So like you go to space and you see the beauty and the awe, and then you come here and you see devastation on the news, or you're in an EMDR session or a ketamine session, and you see exactly why and how your anxiety works, and that you could just be free. And then you go back to your crying baby and you feel anxious. And so I just feel, I don't know why I feel this like fight in me today to say that like it's like this expansion is the fun part, and then there's this like just really wanting to understand how good integration happens for real systems change in all of this.
Totally. Yeah. And I'll just add, I was thinking about the same thing, Sophie.
Okay.
I was wanting to bring it back to the same thing, because I was thinking, the example I was thinking of is like, I'm sure lots of these listeners have like gone to foreign countries, or, like spent even like summer camp. I feel like, when you spend multiple weeks or multiple months in a completely different culture, a completely different environment, and then you come back to your life as it was prior with your, your family doing the same stuff as they were, whatever, it can be hard to come back and be like, wait, but I just felt so like connected to myself and connected to nature, or, I just like saw the world in a totally new way. And then coming back, it's really hard. And so I think you both probably know a lot more integration tools than I do, but one thing that we're working on is having like an astronaut community. So, connecting the people that we fly with people who have flown, who can just like talk to them and mentor them and, talk about it. And then we also have part of our integration is like an integration in self, like what are the new values that you want to live by, as well as like integration in community, like what are the things that you want to do in the community and in the world to like sort of like let that be who you are, essentially.
Yeah. What a wonderful segue into letting people know how they can connect with you and what you're doing. Where do people go? Point us to the website.
Yeah, so Space for Humanity's website is spaceforhumanity.org. And yeah, that's the best way to connect with us. I am building a personal website, but it's not up yet. That'll just be rachellyons.com. And then you can follow us on Instagram. If you are interested in going to space and using your experience as a way to make a difference in your communities and to expand people's minds, you can apply on our website when we reopen applications later this year. So that would just be spaceforhumanity.org/apply.
Okay, fantastic. And we'll put the links in the show notes as usual. Rachel and Sophie, as we wrap up, any sort of final words?
I just love the opportunity. Like when Rachel said, you can apply to space, like I got goosebumps through my body. And like just the fact that there's even that opportunity is so inspiring. And so I'm thinking about how community and connection was part of what brought us together today. And something I know there's another podcast if you want to go back and listen to my work with sensitive kids, but what I even added on in the past month is that the community piece, like once parents of sensitive kids have been through my program, they need to connect with each other. So starting in May, I'll be bringing groups of parents together every week too, so that they can integrate in community. So I'm just so in awe of the conversation and also the constant mirroring that we get to engage with in these connections and in our work in the world and what really matters.
Fantastic. And we'll put links in the show notes to our last conversation and also to your website as well. Rachel, any final words?
I just keep wanting to say the same things as Sophie. It's hilarious. Yeah, I was gonna say something similar of like, Sophie and I are both committed to our own sort of growth and transformation. And so like having each other throughout the years has been amazing. Although our work on the outside is like different, its root is really, really similar, I would say, in a lot of ways, like the essence of it. And so, yeah, just like echoing Sophie's thought about community and getting involved with her program, or just meeting like-minded people who are on a similar path to you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for being on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast, and such a blast. I'm Sophie. Thank you so much for introducing us to Rachel. And I just do encourage everyone, jump across to Space for Humanity and check out what they're doing there, and have a look at some of the videos. Omaze did the video that we watched earlier. And, you know, they've got some cool things as well. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much.